Another metric that we are very passionate to follow is completion rate. The course completion rate at Valuationary is north of 80%, which is only 3 to 7% for Udemy's of the world or for Coursera's of the world.
Yes, I was
So-
absolutely coming to that. Hey guys, welcome to yet another episode of Badass Banias. Today we have with us Prateek Bajaj from Valuationary. Prateek is a CA and a CFA. Let's not waste any more time and ask Prateek about his journey, how it has been, CA journey, CFA journey, and then startup journey. Must have been super amazing, Prateek. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Shantanu, for a lovely introduction.
So, Prateek, we can start off with understanding about your journey before Valuationary. I think that would have been super interesting as well. So why don't we start off there?
So I completed my CA in 2016 and joined a relatively leaner investment bank based out of Mumbai, Equirus Capital. I was there for 3 months, and by the time I received an offer from Bank of America Merrill Lynch, acting as their global financial crimes officer, and I thought it's a big name, big brand name to get associated with.
Right.
So I immediately took that offer, went to Bangalore. I was there for 2 long years. I was very fortunate enough to have a lovely boss in Aparna, and she has been absolutely the mentor that I would look up to. She knew that I would get bored very easily with my day's job, so she kept me motivated with automating things around in operations. While I was making a positive impact in Bankem, I realized that I want to see my success and my contributions firsthand. And I completed my CFA and joined a very small portfolio management company based out of Surat, which is Nivesha Investments. I was taking care of their mutual fund division initially, and in a span of 6 months, I was fortunate enough to grow it by 100%.
Oh, wow.
So with performance and fund flow, it grew by 100%, and I got an out of turn promotion as portfolio consultant. While I was there, I met Kunal. Kunal was a senior equity research analyst at Nivesha. He's also the co-founder of Valuationary. We went along well, and we thought of doing this weekend project, which was doing valuations report for small organizations and startups based out of Surat and Bangalore. And as I clientele grew, we scouted out for employees, and we even interviewed IM people and realized that there's so much gap between products of education system and requirements at workplace that this is a bigger cost to solve. This is a bigger problem to solve, and hence started Valuationary.
Wow. So basically coming from a CA background and, coming from getting into a core investment banking kind of a role, and then transitioning your way towards this startup where you figured out that innate problem that I also feel when I interact with MBAs. Nothing against you guys, but we get
Absolutely.
that
It's not their problem. It's exactly the problem of the system. The Indian education system is broken in that sense.
Absolutely. And wo experiential learning wali cheese, right? That gets ingrained in us in the 3 years of articleship that we go through and our initial career. That is missing from that space. Absolutely. So, it was a problem waiting to be solved. And I think that exists in a lot of different spaces also.
Correct.
So I would want to understand from you, I understood why this particular problem, right? But what was that white space that you identified, and when was it that you realized that, yes, I think this is going to be a big enough space? Because you coming from a CA background and finance background, wo math to lagaya hoga ki market kitna bada hai. So where did that lead you to?
So exactly when we were scouting for employees and struggled to find a right fit, we saw this huge gap. We completely realized that Indian education system is broken. It's outdated. It's resistant to change. It lays too much emphasis on degree and not the skills, and hence leads to structural unemployment. There are 4 crore graduates in India without having that access to right jobs. And at the same time, corporates find it very hard to find right talent. तो बंदे भी हैं और jobs भी है, but they are not able to match.
Correct. That bridge is not there.
Valuationary aspires to be that finishing school, that end product, which is basically the applicative basis of education. It tells students or the candidates what to do with what you have learned. What is that you are required to do at the workplace? And what better way than EdTech? Because we read this World Economic Forum report which said candidates retain up to 60% more material when learning online compared to only 10% in their traditional classroom setup. So we thought, हमको finance पढ़ाना है, हमको EdTech में जाना है, and every metric was showing us in that particular direction. The market, if you ask me, the market is somewhere around $5 billion, just taking into account the Indian market. While we are expanding to other geographies, but even the Indian market is very, very big.
And it has to be, and absolutely right. So essentially what I'm understanding is that it's experiential learning as a service, right? At the end of the day, what you're trying. So yeah, absolutely makes sense. And I can relate it to हमने कैसे articleship की थी, वहाँ कैसे experiential learning मिली, and वो नहीं होता तो अभी क्या हालत है. So absolutely aligned to, finding that niche, and kudos to you on doing that great job that you guys are doing with Valuationary. I talked to a couple of folks before this podcast as a background research and everything, and I heard a lot of good stuff about what you guys trying to do. I mean, it was really interesting and overwhelming to find that kind of a love. But yeah, it was amazing to understand.
Shantanu, that's music to my ears. we absolutely love when our candidates love the product that we are building and love the education that they are rightly getting at Valuationary.
Absolutely. And I think customer love is something that every startup goes after and is ultra passionate about. Every good startup. But according to you, what are some of the other North Star metrics for you guys to figure out, okay, we are going in the right direction or not? Revenue, of course, is one. Investors ko kuch to dikhana padega. But other than that, what is it? And if you can break it down for us in your space, essentially, that you track, and uske pehle, a little bit more about your business model and the revenue model in terms of how do you structure it? Because I think there are a couple of interesting insights there too.
So Valuationary is an EdTech platform where we upskill candidates, which is all done by industry experts. Candidates go through an extensive 2 months training in that particular domain, and then they are placed with our hiring partners. We partake with candidate success in the sense that we do not charge them anything upfront. We take a small deposit, but it's more so about booking their slots. We charge them 10% of their annual CTC when they are really placed with the hiring partner. Where the hiring partner spans across the corporate world, hedge fund, corporate banking, investment banking, right across every financial institutions that we can think about. So the idea is not to just become a EdTech platform. The idea is to be a platform where people learn tangible skills. They interact with an intangible network of finance professionals. At the same time, they grow with meaningful job positions. What if an investment banker wants to get into private equity? What if a corporate banker wants to get into investment banking? Everything around that domain is possible at Valuationary.
Got it. And what's the most interesting thing is that it's a pay it forward kind of a model.
Correct.
Where somebody coming in does not have that anxiety of,
there's absolutely nothing to lose.
Correct. Everything to learn from, everything to gain, but nothing to lose. But I figured that you do it in small batches, I think, right? You don't take in like 500 folks and teach them. So what's that about?
So we take a lot of applications. Around 500 applications is what we averagely get for a 20-something cohort, which can be extended to 25. So out of that 500, we get an assessment done whether they are good fit for the hiring partners or not. While they will be trained at Valuationary, they need to have that cultural sense. They need to have that corporate sense with them in order to be a very good fit for, just to take a name, as reverent as a hedge fund, right? So they need some skills already, which cannot be taught in 2 months program. So
okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So basically, there is a filtering criteria that you apply to take in those candidates, then you train them, and then you make them basically industry fit, industry ready, and then they're shipped to that company. And it's at the end of the day. So do they have to compulsorily join a particular company, or there are a number of companies?
All the candidates get access to all the hiring partners. It's more of their decision. It's more of hiring partner decision who they want and who they don't want. We want the system to be as flexible as possible, and on the basis of their own preferences, and not on the basis of not on the basis of a education institute, which is what is happening at MBA, right? So
yeah, exactly.
We want things to be very free flowing. We want everyone to have access to that education. Currently, we are taking only CAs, CFAs, and MBAs, but down the line, we want to shun this idea of the whole degree, which is happening in tech domain. तो अगर टेक में हो सकता है, सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपर अगर वैसे बन सकते हैं, so there's absolutely a way to do it in the non-tech domain as well, which is where Valuationary comes in.
Absolutely, and I align with you so much. I keep telling this to folks in whatever conversations that I have, is that at the end of the day, it's about having those 4 to 5 core skills rather than any degree that you have. If you have those 4 to 5 core skills, analytical abilities, problem solving skills, and all of that, and some basic Excel skills and those things, those hard skills basically, you are well and good for any kind of a role.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to be defined within that CA ka degree or a CFA ka degree or an MBA ka degree. So I completely align to that thought process. Coming back to, yes, you will explain about it.
So in terms of the traction that we have seen, we have upskilled over 6,000 candidates from across 6 countries today.
Wow.
The metric that we really follow is enrollments that come in at Valuationary, in terms of also the courses that we provide. So we have few micro courses as well, which a candidate can take, and of course the cohorts that we run on a monthly basis. We are growing at about 100%. And another metric that we are very passionate to follow is completion rate. The course completion rate at Valuationary is north of 80%, which is only 3 to 7% for Udemy's of the world or for Coursera's of the world.
Yes, I was absolutely coming to that.
That's the value addition that we are bringing to the table. From 3% to 80%, the completion rate is wide because of the live sessions we take, because of the interaction that they get with industry leaders, because of the pay after placement model that we have. So the completion rate is very high.
Absolutely brilliant. I was just coming to that. I wanted you to maybe, kind of highlight it. I did not know you were already tracking it. For me also, it is, I always kind of think, yeah, MOOCs and you have YouTube videos and you have learning material on YouTube, you have learning material on Udemy and all. But same, I read a report by Harvard where they said 3 to 6% completion rate. And I was like, तो फिर YouTube पे education material इतना available है, लोग complete क्यों नहीं कर रहे?
Correct.
And then I figured out that this whole MOOCs versus TBC wala thing, cohort-based courses, cohort-based learning programs. And I think, yes, absolutely. Those cohort-based learning programs in small cohorts of people are...
Small nudges are important. People find it very interactive enough if they are just told, please complete the course, you will be getting a certificate which will be industry recognized. Please do this course, you will be learning a skill which will be lifelong with you. So those nudges are required and are important.
Absolutely. And if you guys are tracking completion rate, I think you're already there in terms of customer love also. And if it is 80% plus, nothing like it. For those who don't understand what 80% plus means in this industry, 6 to 10% भी बहुत मुश्किल से होता है किसी का 20,000 के कोर्स पे भी. So it's not कि ज़्यादा पैसा दे के भी लोग खत्म कर रहे हैं. So absolutely kudos to you guys on that metric. But for you guys, without naming them, maybe for your competitors, closest peers, maybe, what does that look like, right? And do you see them mushrooming around now in the space? I would love to know your take on that.
So there are few direct competitors, but there are various indirect competitors. Like MBA Institute for us is an indirect competitor, and they are big. They are everywhere in the market. So we are trying to carve a niche in the finance domain, in the business domain, at the same time letting people know and nudging the corporates that, see, a degree won't help you to have a candidate who will stick with you for coming 3-4 years and do the job for you. What is needed are the skills, and we are providing that. So candidates understand the value proposition, corporates understand the value proposition, and hence we are very different to that of our competitors. We are trying to carve something that is not there. We are trying to do something that's been talked about but not have been done. So in that sense, we are very unique.
That's super interesting. Yeah. In terms of scaling this up, right? Obviously, technology will help you out, but there's this native restriction in terms of the cohorts that you have.
Yes.
Correct. So in terms of scaling it up, what are those 2 to 3 things that you have on top of your mind, right? That are the major things for you to solve for when it comes to scaling it up?
Shantanu, you sound like just like my investor who talks about how will you scale the product. So what we want to do and how we are really different to that of Newton, which runs a similar model in tech space. They have one product. They make full stack developers. While at Valuationary, we have multiple cohorts by multiple leaders on multiple timelines. So it's not that I'm running a program for 3 years or 11 months or 1 year. I'm running a program for as long as 2 to 3 months. And I keep on running that program as well as other programs. So I can have multiple cohorts by multiple leaders at multiple timelines, which is a scalable model.
Correct. So basically it's creating a marketplace kind of a thing, a high niche marketplace kind of a thing, where onboarding of educators is also tough, right? You have a qualifying criteria for that. Onboarding of institutions is there, and then onboarding of students is there, where you do the matchmaking at the end of the day.
Correct. So and we are not really marketplace. The whole system is operated by us, and even the instructors go through a very rigorous assessment process before coming at Valuationary.
Yeah. So what is that about? I mean, how does that process look like? If you have analyzed that funnel, what is the reject rate or something like that? If you have that on top of your mind.
So I do not have rejection rate per se on top of my mind, but a lot of people from various places approach us in terms of whether we can be a instructor at Valuationary. What we do is we have an assessment process in terms of their skills that they tell they possess. So in terms of financial modeling, in terms of business valuation, in terms of credit analysis, we have made various assessments for various domains that are all possible in finance domain. They have to go through that, and if they make it through, they are taken in. It's not so about the numbers, to be honest. It's more so about the real concepts that are being delivered.
Correct. Absolutely interesting. And where you said about that, then being 2 to 3 months on a program. I was just thinking in terms of, rotation of capital, how fast is the money rotating? In the Newton model, it's rotating in 12 months. In your model, it's rotating in 2 months, 2 to 3 months.
Absolutely.
So from that perspective, as an investment, bang on.
And even if the pedigree of instructors at Valuationary is to be questioned, we have likes of Ajay Surana, who has been the ex-director of Moody's. We have Palak Jairajani, who has been ex-vice president of Morgan Stanley. They have been into that particular domain for more than a decade. Right. So that kind of caliber they bring to the table.
And do you do exclusives with them, exclusive contracts, or is it open?
Yes, they exclusively are working with Valuationary, and they are dedicating a lot of their time to Valuationary.
Superb, yeah, superb. So this is super interesting to me. But let's come back to your journey and all of that. So you are from a non-tech background. So am I. Right? How difficult is it to be in the tech space, or how not difficult was it for you to be in the tech first space, leading a non-tech kind of an organization, but then being in the tech first space? Some experiences, anecdotes from that.
Understanding technology is utmost important. There's no denying to the fact that if you don't know what you're doing, you cannot really tell someone else to do it for you. So I was very fortunate enough to meet my long lost school friend Mahib Gupta, who is the chief of product and now has been elevated to co-founder status. Uh, he met me for some other work. He was going through something else, and he wanted to rekindle because of my approach to things. And I thought he has worked for likes of Byju's and Procter as product manager. He has edtech knowledge and product knowledge for the last 3-4 years. Why not bring him on board and make him the chief of product and scale this up? So I was very fortunate to exactly meet him at the time when we were interviewing a lot of tech partners. So having everything in source is also very important. You cannot really outsource the core domain that you want to carve. अगर आप अपना कोडिंग या फिर अपना प्रोडक्ट ही आउटसोर्स कर दोगे और सोचोगे आप बिजनेस हो, then you are not really business, you are into trading of the product. So absolutely right. Mahip and a team of developers work on the tech domain. I've been fortunate enough to read a lot about it. I've been fortunate enough to have one-to-one knowledge from Mahip coming in to understand what exactly is going on and how can we really contribute to the process. Right. So knowing technology is utmost important. It cannot be even contested.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming to the fundraise process, fundraising is an ongoing activity. At the same time, it's an activity that needs to be done if you really want to scale faster, and in a sense that if you want to scale to a topper level, right? So how we pursue fundraising at Valuationary is we take strategic investments and strategic investors only. We want to really collaborate people who not only bring money to the table. There's too much money in the world, Shantanu, especially at this point in time where the liquidity is higher.
Absolutely.
What we really want is to have investors who not only bring money, but also the connections, also the pedigree that will help us not only to scale, but also to sustain.
Absolutely right. And I think thank you for raising this point. And I see so many folks missing on this very, very subtle point. In that process of fundraising, sometimes folks lose sight of, it's like, मेरे को 1.5 करोड़ उठाना है, ठीक है, वो मेरा 1.5 करोड़ भर जाना चाहिए. Cash is cash at the end of the day. They forget to look at who that money is coming from, whether those people can open doors for you आगे जाके, right? And it becomes chaotic. I've seen startups where it became so chaotic for them after raising money because their investors were harassing them mostly, right? I don't want to scare off people by saying this, but yes, that happens. That is the nature of the game.
Also, even the investors have become very founder friendly today. They take care of the founder side of the things, but there are startups in the process of raising funds have already lost control of the baby that they want to grow out with.
Correct.
So I know few stealth startups who have not been into the public domain yet and have already lost control. So just in that frenzy of fundraising, people have started to raise funds which they have absolutely no idea of how to really utilize it. So you need to have a proper mindset as to what is the money for and who is it coming from. So that is the approach at Valuationary.
Correct. Inflow किधर से आएगा and outflow किधर जा रहा है. If that is not sorted before raising money, don't raise. That's the harsh truth in this space. Absolutely right. And as you rightly said about non-tech founders, either it's about solving that problem at the end. Solve it yourself, get in some guy. Absolutely aligned with insourcing a niche kind of a technology. But what I find in the market right now is a lot of D2C folks coming in, right? Creating something that is not really new. There's nothing new about the technology that they develop. There are a lot of no-code tools available out there. A lot of no-code programs available out there, which they can plug and play. And I don't know, what is your take on that? Looking at that side, should you build something that's already been built out there by other folks and just plug and play it and start your startup, or wait to find that right kind of a, tech co-founder and then build something?
So startups, as I perceive, is either innovating or improving. Where
Correct.
improvement cannot be marginal, it needs to be something that is really valuable. So while you can build another brand, that brand should speak about why is it better than others. So the D2C brands that are coming out, they are trying to be healthy, they are trying to be better, they are trying to do things that traditional D2C brands have not been doing. While they have been claiming that they are healthy, the fact that the systems or the diagnoses show they are not as healthy as they claim to be. So the startups that are coming out, even in the D2C space, while brand plays a lot of role in that whole process of fundraising or even the scaling up process, but bringing something which is not only marginally improved, but at least 10x improved from the current scheme of things. So innovation is very important, but it is not mandatory to come out with a startup. Even if you are improving current set of things, it can be a startup, but at least the improvement should be 10x.
It can be a good enough business enabled by tech also. You don't have to be
Correct.
a tech first. It can be a business enabled through tech, distributing through tech.
Boat as we know, it's a traditional audio company, but it is now renamed as audio tech company. So it's just another D2C brand selling off audio products, but it is such a great product, especially in India, where the people are very price sensitive. So
absolutely right.
Improving product at a price sensitive for a price sensitive candidates or price sensitive audience is equally a good startup to follow.
Supreme. That's super interesting. There's this one question that we kind of ask every founder, and that is around the core of what we do and what we kind of envision and what we want to improve in the world. And that's creating an impact around financial literacy and personal finance, improving the personal finance journey of Gen Zs and millennials. What's your take on that? Number one, are you financially independent? Number two, how important do you think that plays a role in a startup founder or in general, a person at your stage in life? Super personal.
No, it's something that I take pride about, so I will like to speak on it.
Awesome.
I became financially independent right after 12th when I was just 18. I have since not taken any money from my parents, and how it started is taking tuitions for mathematics for 11th and 12th graders. So much so that I grew my brand as a mathematics teacher here in Surat, and people from various schools started taking my services, and I was fortunate enough to bring a corpus or make a corpus that will not only fund my education but also fund my travel. So financial independence in truest of sense is when you're not really dependent to take risks on anybody, right? And it can not only come from savings. Women in India, they are savings queen, right? There's absolutely no one who can who is better at savings than them. But mere savings is not important. You need to invest, you need to make your money work for you. Only then you can become financially independent. So financial independence in the truest of sense is very important. We live in a patriarchal society, Shantanu, to be honest, and finance has been made and concocted in the sense that it looks very difficult from women perspective or child's perspective, whereas it can be dumbed down to an extent where it becomes plain ABCs. So the kind of work you're doing at Redon, or the kind of work that is really required to do, is make that finance approachable and make that finance believable for all the people in the world, right? Not only the high supreme male, but also for the female counterparts, for the children counterparts. They should understand. 76% of Indians do not even understand what is FDs. So we live in such a world which is so advanced, which is so tech friendly, but yet people have this suspicion. People have this they are awry to the fact that they can be financially independent.
Absolutely, and everybody in this space. Thank you so much. And everybody has kind of made it so overwhelming, right? Talking about businesses, finance, ऐसा लगता है कितना मेहनत वाला चीज है. And I have always had that in me, that I find this space to be fun. And I think people shouldn't just keep talking in jargons and talking in, high funda, high level numbers and all of that. It can be dumbed down, and it can be made just as a very, very, normal part of your life, just a simple thing that you can discuss in chai addas and dinner tables. It should be that way, and we've grown up doing that, right?
Also, people need to have access to that kind of education. Yes. People need to inculcate not only coding but financial literacy in the education system. They need to have that access. Ke saving nahi important hai, investing important hai, but investing agar wrong ho jaye, so it can even crush out all the savings. So you need to be careful about who you are learning from and what are you learning.
Absolutely right. And personalizing the whole experience. I see so much of generic gyan out there. Do this, do that, this formula, that formula. Man, my personal finance journey has a lot of different context than your personal finance journey.
Absolutely.
Right? मेरे पापा ने शायद डुबाए होंगे स्टॉक मार्केट में पैसे, तो मुझे स्टॉक मार्केट से डर लगता है inherently.
Correct.
How can you? I mean, nobody is dealing with that right now. So that is a space where we want to create an impact. But
if you allow me, Shantanu, we can give out at least 100 of our beginner's guide to investing course for your first 100 listeners, and it will be a pleasure for us if they get to understand finance from Valuationary.
Let's do that. Let's definitely do that. See, guys, not planned. Yes, I really enjoyed this conversation. But I would want you to just give out some of your, parting words, gyan, thoda sa, for the Gen Z millennial watching this, who might be thinking of getting into the startup space or just on that brink of an idea, bas we jump lena baat. Anything for them.
So I often say either startup or work with a startup. There's absolutely no better time than today to get into that bandwagon of startup ecosystem here in India. It's flourishing, and it's absolutely the right time. And it is being recognized by the right people. The cognizance is so heavy. आप 2010 में कोई startup बोलते थे तो लोग सोचते थे you are either a failure or a joke. But today's time, you will be reverent, you will be relevant in the current scheme of things. So even if you fail, as Kunal Shah puts across, even if you fail, you will be a better employee. Even if you fail, you will be relevant to the industry. So absolutely have that, take that plunge, take that first step, have that courage to either start up or work with a startup. I clearly remember what Peter Thiel says in 0 to 1 is, if you're not beginning, how will you really end? Right? If you want to really become a founder, you need to take that first step. If you not really going out there and telling the world, I am the risk taker, they will always take you for granted. They will always take you for an employee.
Correct. Absolutely amazing conversation, Prateek. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. A mathematics teacher at heart, a social entrepreneur, trying to create a niche in the edtech space, really driving experiential learning, which we all of us agree that is a dire need. I love this conversation, and I hope you guys did too. Keep in touch and keep following Badass Banias, brought to you by Read On. Thanks. Bye-bye.